So how has the economy reacted to Brexit?
Well, I think the economy has reacted remarkably sensibly to Brexit on the whole, although there are large numbers of people who obviously didn't want Britain to decide to leave the European Union, who have done their very best to talk the economy down. And this, I think, is what has produced the very substantial falls initially in the FTSE and indeed in the exchange rate as well, although the FTSE has bounced right back and indeed is well above where it was before the decision was taken on the 23rd of June. Actually, what's happened in the real economy is rather encouraging. There's been substantial amounts of new investment announced recently. The consumer demand in shops seems to be holding up well. There seems to be no evidence so far from employment figures or anything else that the economy is going downwards. And indeed, there's no reason why it should. Nothing really is going to change while the negotiations over Brexit go on for the next 2 years. And the very fact that investment is holding up with these new announcements, I think is very encouraging in the sense that we're not just looking at a short-term stabilisation of the economy, we're looking at really rather good long-term prospects. So I think that the situation on the economy is relatively encouraging. Obviously there was going to be a bit of a downturn when the Brexit decision was taken, but I think there's nothing to worry about in the medium or the long term.
If Britain doesn't manage to negotiate access to the single market without any controls on immigration, in the absence of a trade deal even, if we were just trading under World Trade Organization rules and tariffs, would that be damaging for the British economy?
Well, I think one of the most important parts about the renegotiation that's taking place is for Britain to have a position to which it can walk away if we can't get a reasonable deal from the rest of the European Union. Obviously, what we should try and do is to get a reasonable deal agreed, which is in the interest of both the EU and the UK. But if we find that we're just not getting there, we need to have a fallback position. And the fallback position needs to be that we trade with the European Union without any free trade area between us and them at all. Now, that doesn't stop us selling to the European Union at all, because access to the single market doesn't depend on us being in the single market. It means we've just got to have competitive goods and services that people want to buy. But what we would have to do is to pay tariffs, but they're pretty low, averaging round about 3% nowadays, which really is not an unmanageable number, especially if the pound goes down a bit to compensate. So the really important thing to realise about these negotiations is that we don't have a position where we've got nothing to fall back on if we can't get an agreement. We're better to walk away from a bad agreement than not to have one at all.